I'm Russ Fletcher. I'm the founder of the Montana Technology Roundtable and also a new startup called Intenio Systems. And we help companies of any size implement business intelligence, big data systems quickly, economically, easily, so that everybody wants to use them. And this is Eric Frazon.
Hi, Eric Frazon. I'm president of SemanticWeb.com and been operating in the data space since about 2000, helping people with enterprise data questions and data quality, data governance, a lot of different data management issues. And about 10 years ago, I got involved in semantic technologies and the semantic web. It's a set of standards out of the W3C, the people that gave us HTML and CSS. And on Friday, I'll be giving a full presentation on that, but it's very data focused. And so I've always been very interested in data, and big data started catching hold a couple, 3 years ago. I started following that meme at the time, and I was glad to have this opportunity to come here and talk with Russ and y'all about what's going on with big data.
The really fun part about this is it was probably about a month and a half ago. I was talking to a friend of mine in London, and he said, "Have you heard about Big Data Week?" He'd heard about my new startup. And I said, "No, what is it?" He said, "Well, they get together the big cities in the world, and they all sponsor events during the week, and then they share information, and they discuss things, and they try and collaborate a little bit." And I said, "Well, you know, shoot, I mean, Missoula qualifies." So if you look on the big data site, there's you know, Berlin and Chicago and Paris and New York and Missoula. So and it was so funny. I originally thought that this would be a statewide event, just because, I mean, we don't have enough big data in one little city to do that much for a week. Sat down with the origination group, about 6 of us, and I made that proposal, and they said, "Okay, fine, we'll think about that in a minute." And then they started talking. We filled up the whole week in about half an hour. There is so much going on between businesses, between the university, between the research that's being done and some of the companies here. It is absolutely amazing what's happening in Missoula. And I've long been an advocate of taking a look at a community and figuring out, what do you do really good? What could you really capitalize on? How could you build a business cluster? And we think that that's very much what we're beginning to do here with the Big Data Alliance being hosted by the Missoula Economic Partnership. This is going to be ongoing. All of these events that we're holding are all being filmed, so we're going to put them up on the tubes. And I think this is something that could grow quite a bit. But I really believe, you want to go to the second slide? I think it's time.
Sure. Yeah. So, oh, sorry. It's a data quality issue, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's appropriate. I bet you all know more about data than you think, because it's so involved in our lives these days. And so I'm going to have a little challenge here. We've got a whiteboard. I'm going to find a marker over there. If at any time during this event, during today's presentation, you can think of something that isn't impacted by data, or data doesn't have an impact on it, please let me know. I'll write it up on the board here, and at the end of our presentation here, we'll pick the best one. And I've got a bottle of wine here. We got a present here, a prize here for the person who can think up something that doesn't get touched by data. I got a pretty good idea. I'm going to walk home with this bottle of wine.
It's a good bottle. I'm going to start thinking.
So nobody's a dummy on this. We're going to show you how dummy we are. So hit it.
And the reality is that there's so much disagreement, even among the experts, as to what big data is and what it's all about, that I did want to put that up there and make the point that if someone says they are an absolute expert and has all the answers about big data, you might want to think about walking the other way, or at least carry in a great big grain of salt. So, isn't data what computers do? Isn't it what they've always done? All these old machines that we've used over the years, isn't data what they were all about, computing power? Even back in 1890, we were computing census data. So that leads me to the question, what's different now? What has changed to make this big data big and important and get on everybody's radar as it has? You'll hear, if you start digging into this at all, you'll hear a lot of different definitions of big data, and as I said, there's a lot of disagreement around it. But it kind of started with a definition that said big data affects these three vectors: volume, velocity, and variety. Those three factors of data qualify something as big data and a big data challenge. Now, I started hearing about big data as a theme 2 or 3 years ago, and that's when it started really hitting the mainstream press and being talked about in a lot of IT organizations. But back in February of 2001, a colleague and friend of mine named Doug Laney, who was working at Metagroup, which is now part of Gartner, if you've heard of Gartner research, talked about the 3D management of data and controlling data volume, velocity, and variety. So even that isn't really a new concept. Here's a more formal description of that volume, velocity, variety question. For those in the back, I'll read it. Big data is data that exceeds the processing capacity of conventional database systems. The data is too big, moves too fast, or doesn't fit the structures of your database architectures. That's the variety piece. To gain value from this data, you must choose an alternative way to process it. That's from Ed Dumble, who's been working at O'Reilly for the past few years. So people started realizing they were hitting walls as they were trying to work with the data in their systems. And they were finding that it wouldn't fit into their existing databases because it was too big. It was coming at them too fast from too many different directions and too many types of data. And they just weren't prepared to deal with it. So big data started catching on as vendor companies and experts came along and said, we can help you solve those problems. So let's talk about the volume piece. One metaphor that you may hear a lot is drinking from the fire hose. There is so much data in our world today. Anybody disagree with that statement? To give you a couple of examples, there is a category of databases called very large databases, and it's an official category, and I know this because they have an acronym, VLDB. And I just heard a presentation by this gentleman, Robin Bloor of the Bloor Group, last week, where he presented these statistics that very large databases grow exponentially, 1,000-fold, every 6 years. If any of you have ever heard of Moore's Law, that says that computing power will double in size about every 18 months. So very large databases are cubing Moore's Law. Back in 1991, 2 megabytes was considered a very large database. If any of you have a smartphone, you know you've got a lot more power than that in your pocket today. And the expectation is that by 2015, the average very large database will hold 16 exabytes. That's a lot of zeros.
How many of you have an exabyte at home? You know, in your kitchen somewhere? A good way to kind of break it down to kind of get an idea, the world produces more data in one day than all the grains of sand on all the beaches of the world. Think about that. That's a big number.
So those are those very large databases that may be in one place. Here's some more touch points from our daily lives. Email, around 90 trillion are sent per year. Facebook has 1,310,000,000 users. Twitter has 645,750,000 users. Google, there were
A Google lot.
A whole Google lot of searches in 2013. Walmart, this was an interesting statistic for me, $36 million spent every hour of every day at Walmart. Now that's just a single data point, but think about all the data that's hidden in that number. All those transactions, all those credit cards that get swiped, all that product data that may be in a UPC barcode that gets scanned when you check out. There's a lot of data involved in that, and a lot of data on the front end of the purchase and on the back end that Walmart is looking at as they see what's selling in a particular store, what do we need to buy more of, what analytics are they doing on the back end of that. AT&T, 190,000 cell phone towers in the US, 95.5 million wireless customers. So there's a big volume of data.
One little thing, you go to Safeway, and I've talked to some executives at some of the grocery stores. It's getting to a point now where the value of the data that they collect on their consumers is in fact more valuable than the goods that they're selling. Because they can sell that to the manufacturers, who can then say, we need to modify our product this way, or we need to raise our volume in this, or we need to do a sale here and make sure that it's put here right next to this, because that really makes for a much bigger sale when it is absolutely amazing how they slice and dice the data of just everyday purchases.
So the second factor of big data, the velocity factor. It's not just that there's a lot of it, but it's moving fast. It's flying through our systems and across the web. And that is another processing challenge for the machines in our lives and the humans in our lives. As, what do you do with all this data if you're trying to get out from under a large amount of it and it just keeps coming faster and faster? Email, 2.8 million are sent per second. Facebook, 695,000 status updates per minute. 58 million average tweets per day on Twitter. So that data moving so fast, even if you think back to the Walmart transactional data, you've got several lanes open at every single Walmart, and all that data is getting sucked up and sent somewhere. So the velocity factor is a really critical business problem. And the last piece is the variety piece. It used to be that people would store and compute data in very siloed systems. Some of those computers we saw images of earlier. You could store it all in there, process it over time, and you knew up front what kind of data you could put into that system, and you could therefore create a structure that would hold that kind of data. But the reality is today that all this data that's flying around so fast and so much of it, there's a wide variety of it. These are just a handful of images I threw up there to kind of represent the different kinds of data that you might run into in an organization. Over here on the side, you have Oracle and IBM and Microsoft with their enterprise data systems. You have some of the new players on the scene, like Amazon Web Services, which is where things are stored in the cloud, if you've heard of cloud computing. Hadoop and MongoDB are big players right now because of the way that they structure data in new and innovative ways. Hadoop is particularly well suited for big data because it scales very well and very quickly. So IT teams can very quickly spin up another instance of Hadoop, another data store to put this stuff in. We often forget about all the data that's out there just sitting on the web in HTML documents. And not just HTML documents, but PDF documents. And this is a popular text editor. A lot of people, a lot of office workers, keep important data in text documents. Or our good old friend Excel. A lot of companies run business units off of Excel. It's not just for spreadsheets anymore. And then we have multimedia that very much plays into this. photos, videos, and audio files. They all contain data. They all represent data assets for companies, and companies are trying to drill into all of these data assets to get insight, to make decisions, and to figure out where to go to next. The rise of the smartphones has played a lot into our world of big data. How many people here have one with them? Yep.
Better question, who doesn't have one? Aha! They don't know where you are right now.
That's right, because those are connected with GPS. You can locate them. They're connected to the internet. 4.6 billion mobile phone subscriptions worldwide. That's a lot of mobile phones, a lot of data that has left those siloed computers, that has left those locked-in machines and systems, and is walking around with all of us every day. Another side topic of big data is the Internet of Things. This is the concept that the various things in our world can be tied into these data systems. So to give you some examples, here's a QR code, and this is true of barcodes too. Anything that has one of those has some data embedded in it that you can learn more about. This is an RFID tag where you not only have data, but you have a mechanism for communicating that data much the same way you would with this, but it doesn't have to be scanned. Fitbit and Jawbone have created these fitness trackers for people. A lot of data about health and wellness being transmitted. Here's a wind farm. And the interesting thing about our energy grid is that people are putting sensors on even small parts of these various systems. So if there's a sensor on an oil rig on a particular part, that can send a signal if that fails, that part fails. Again, back to the grocery store, lots of data in the grocery store through the various devices and the things in our lives. This is one of the Google driverless cars you might have heard about. And even if you look past the futuristic driverless part, a lot of our newer automobiles are tied into the internet and are sending data and receiving data, using it when you plug into the inboard GPS.
Did you ever wonder why Google spent so much money and time to build Street View and Google Maps and all of that? I mean, that's a lot of money, and they're not getting anything for it, right? It's so much fun. You could be in San Francisco now, and I was just there, and you're driving along and you see a car coming by you, and there's a guy sitting behind the wheel. He's got his arm up here and his other arm out the window, and he's just cruising along. He's going to the store or wherever it might be. They've done, what is it, 700,000 or 800,000 miles now of driverless cars mileage in San Francisco Bay Area alone without a single accident. And all those cars are connected electronically. They're sharing data, and they're using Google Maps and Google View to figure out where to go. It's just amazing.
We're entering a phase where people are making their homes smarter and smarter with smart TVs, washing machines, refrigerators. This is a picture of Nest, which is the home thermostat controlling system that Google just bought for vast amounts of money. I don't remember what the number was, but it was a crazy
For a
number.
thermostat. That's amazing.
And the obligatory picture of someone wearing a Google Glass over here that's sending data. Yes?
We have it set up, I can unlock my house right now if the service person comes, I have a cable coming in there. Say, okay, you're at my front door, I can unlock it,
Yep.
And you can monitor your house. It can tell you, you left the water on, you know.
I haven't gotten quite that far yet.
Well, that's a huge business right now, of being able to, there's a commercial of the kids coming home and the parents said, did you lock up the house? They said, sure. And he looks at his phone and he starts turning off the water, the lights, he locks the door, you know, he turns off the fireplace and closes the refrigerator door. I mean.
What happens if anybody learns how to jam all this stuff?
Aha, now you're getting into the deep data. This is the scary part. Tomorrow, there's going to be a great discussion about the security of Is it tonight?
Tonight.
Tonight,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's tonight. That one's going to be fascinating because it is a huge problem. Things can get hacked.
I mean, all these cars with no drivers, and all of a sudden they lose communication.
There is no well,
Between cars there is.
between cars, yeah, there's all kinds of ways that it can go. But hopefully the cars are going to be running on their own, so they even if they can't communicate with other cars, the sensors will still stay, there's something in front of me, stop, or I'm going down the wrong street or whatever it might be. But that's a huge problem.
All right, so we've talked about the volume, velocity, variety. Just to illustrate that disconnect and disagreement that there is in the space, if you're feeling at all like a dummy at this point, which I hope you're not, I wanted to show you some of the disagreement. I have heard people shouting about additional V's need to be added, like value, veracity, viability, and the list goes on. So just know that what we tried to do today was kind of give you a baseline for talking about big data. But you will hear other ideas this week. You will hear other ideas as you read about this in the media. And the dust certainly has not settled yet.
Has anybody come up with something that isn't impacted by data? Any thoughts? Just pick something. It's so much fun. I was talking to some folks the other day, and just to give you an example of what you can do when you start working together and collaborating, I read a great story, and it was about the problems that they had on the East Coast with storms, with the floods, with the big events that caused people to run to the store and stock up. So they got the retailers together and they said, so what do they buy? What's the most important thing? What is the one thing that has the highest percentage increase when there's a storm coming? So, what do you think? Beer. Good choice.
Batteries.
Batteries? Batteries? Anyone else? Water? Yeah? I mean, you think all the, toilet paper, I mean, what are you going to need?
Bottles.
Bottles of,
Just for storage.
well, I'd have them full of wine if I were going to buy bottles. I mean, plywood, yeah. They went through all those little checkout receipts and all that data they'd got. The one product that has the highest percentage increase before a storm is coming or an event is coming that people can prepare for, strawberry Pop-Tarts. Purchases go like up 700% before a big event. And you think about it, it's a delicious little dessert. You don't have to cook it. You don't have to do anything. You can open it up and eat it. And they buy tons of them before a storm comes. There was no way that any 1, 2, or 3 stores could have figured that out. It took all that data to combine it together. And that's where the breaking down of silos. You're seeing competing elements will now start collaborating and sharing data. They keep a lot of it private, but they can start sharing this data to help them put pressure on the marketers or the makers or whomever it might be. But it's so constantly evolving. And one of the big things that's coming out about this is that, and I was talking to some students last night, it is becoming so pervasive that I think in a very short time, it's going to be very difficult for someone coming out of college to get a job. And I don't care in what area, if they don't have some level of understanding or the ability to do some level of data analysis. Because it's in just about every department, it's in most companies, small, big, and large. I had a quote the other day, and it said, this is the one thing that should keep CEOs up at night the most. Because if you're not worried about this, if you're not figuring out, how do we solve this problem, your company may not be viable in 5 or 10 years. It's getting that important. I know when I work with clients, we love to sit down and talk with them, and we start working with them and show them some things. Within a couple of months, the comment is always, how did we ever get by without this? Because they find that they have those silos of data. People don't talk to each other. They don't communicate on the right level. So it's really becoming fun. What are you seeing in the legal field in data? How is it changing?
It's changed a lot especially since 2008, due to the crash, even not the crash. The whole landscape has changed dramatically. Definitely a significant increase in the volume of data, email. We work with discovery documents, so email, dealing more and more with social media, electronically stored information, which is loose. Basically, the loose electronic files, things that are not stored in a container, like a portfolio or a database or Excel spreadsheet. ESI are the files that are sitting out on your hard drive that aren't necessarily stored in anything, and all of which can be part of the discovery process in a legal setting, and managing that kind of data for attorneys so that they can look at large volume of data and find what is pertinent to their specific case, to the specific case they're dealing with, or what's privileged, or whatever the criteria is. I mean, there's, and we're not seeing, I mean, we've seen a significant increase in volume here in Montana, but not anything like the what's happening on the coast in terms of big for lawsuits.
So if you're going to commit a crime, don't touch a computer, don't have a cell phone, don't go to the store.
Yeah, except that I would say that at this point, and this is one of the frustrations as part of why we're here, but one of the frustrations for us is that attorneys, if I go and talk to almost any group of attorneys and ask, what are you doing about electronic discovery right now, they're going to tell me, we're hoping nobody asks. We're not asking because we're afraid the other side will ask back. They're not dealing with it. So right now, if you're here in Montana, you're probably pretty safe. But that's going to be a rapidly changing landscape. And because there is data out there, and because people are figuring out more and more easier and easier, better ways to deal with it.
It's changing so fast. It's so rapid. I mean, I'm in the business, Eric's in the business, and it's so hard just to keep up. It's just amazing. It's back.
It's back. Now, so there are a couple people that I recognized from last night, so you will have already seen this, apologies. But this is a really wonderful video to kind of show from a consumer's perspective what big data might look like in our lives. You can also, while you're watching this, take the perspective of imagining what's going on the other side of these transactions at the companies that own or are collecting this big data. So, now I apologize in advance. I was not able to find an audio hookup for this room, so we're working off of my laptop speakers.
I saw that was it Amazon or Google opened up next day delivery in New York, I think 3 or 4 days ago. And they were so inundated, the system closed down at noon. They couldn't keep up. And if you think about where this is going, I'm working with one entrepreneur, and he's developing a technology that will allow you to interact with your TV. And it's a single button remote control for your TV, which, God help us. But you can point and click on the screen and do all the things you need to do. And if you see something in a TV show, like a vacuum cleaner, you can click on the vacuum cleaner, and up will come all the information about it and where you can purchase it. And you can click and buy it right then. You can click on a sports figure who's playing football and click on him, and it'll give you his stats for the game, but also for his career. You can't buy him. It's the data behind all of this is just absolutely fantastic. And somebody's saving all of it too, so they can tell what you're clicking on, what questions you're asking, and start seeing interest patterns.
All right, try this again.
have 2 appointments today and 1 important date alert. Consult your diary for further information. Have a nice day.
Take me to the docks, there's a ship without a name there, and it is sailing to the middle of the sea. Water there is deep.
So, what's on today?
Anything you've ever seen. Jump right in and swim until you're free.
Oh, Julie's birthday. Better Skype her.
I will remember your face.
No, better leave her to sleep. Oh, that new Kevin Spacey production's on at the Old Vic. And Rihanna's big tour kicks off at Twickenham. Ah, brilliant. Joy Smart Shopper event starts today. Yep. It's going to be a good day today.
So can you hear it?
Right. And now I should be plenty. Oh dear. Looks a bit busy out there. Let me sync my phone. Okay. That route makes sense. And a coffee will go down nicely. Joy, here I come. Green is big in Tokyo, but it's red in London.
Don't know what it feels about, but I like it somehow. And you try to make it.
Show me, show me, show me. Hmm? That's nice. That's quite nice. Not sure about the colour on that. Yes. Love this coat. Well, I like it. Let's see what my friends think. Instagram. Oh, here we go. Thanks. Oh, cheeky. But you know what? I agree. I'm gonna buy it. Time to pay. Which till is free? Ah. Okay, please. That's £50, please. Thank you very much. Pleasure. Thank you. Have a good day. You too. Bye. Let me check in. Okay. Sacred. Oh, yummy, free cake. What a lovely thought. Ah, Julie's awake. Gotta Skype her. Thank you. Hi, Julie. Happy birthday, sweetie.
Thanks, hon. Nice of you to remember. How's your day been?
Great, everything's worked a treat. How's San Fran?
How many would you like to go shopping like that? Seriously, would you? Why?
Because she already knows what to do everywhere. She's learned, she's taken time to learn how each of those little devices works, and she's not, there's never a glitch. She's not frustrated with any of them. She doesn't have to say, hey, somebody come help me, I don't know how to use this. And why would she I wouldn't want to take time to learn all of that. If I could just go look for the red coat, I don't need really to walk into the store and have my phone tell me, give me a map to the red coat. I don't want to shop that way.
Mm-hmm. How did it come up with the red coat?
I don't know how it came up with the red coat.
Yeah, see, that's where all the data from all of her past shopping experiences and what she'd looked at in the newspaper or the magazines.
And this is one of the questions that I have about, some of the work that I do, I keep reading about how I'm seeing this phrase about customers demand a certain kind of experience. Customers are demanding personalized experience, demanding to know where the red coats are. Well, if I have one red coat, I'm not going to look for another one.
Yeah.
And I don't really, did any of us raise our hands when you asked that question that we all want to shop that way? I don't know who's demanding this stuff.
Well,
Millennials? Is this
yeah.
The kids seem to be more adaptable to it, or...
Those damn kids.
Well, I don't know, I mean, I'm not saying that. But I kind of agree. I mean, I don't really want corporate databases to know that much about me, frankly.
Too late.
It's probably too late for that. You're right,
But you notice the first coat that came up was brown.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, the first came up as a brown coat, and she said, no, I don't like that. And she went red. Oh, I like red. You know?
Well, maybe it's just a semantic thing, but I think it's interesting that so many people are using the phrase demand, and I'm wondering if, are we really demanding it, or are we adjusting to it? Or both.
But I think there's probably a bit of both. Yeah.
But I think that's a very, very good point. I think, and I don't think it's necessarily millennials. They're used to it. They've adjusted to it. They've grown up with it. We've made that possible for them. But I don't. My nieces are no more interested in. If we go shopping, you go out and engage with the store. You go look at. It's
a social
experience, which is you totally lose with that. And they're no more interested in doing that. They may come home on the subway home from work, order dinner to be delivered to their New York City apartment, so that it's there at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock when they get home. That they might do, where I would not do that. But to go out and do clothes shopping, they're going to go to the store. So I think it's a very good point.
So, does big data have the opportunity to make us more isolated?
Or does it ultimately have the idea to help us build even better community and networking and relationships? She could Skype her friend.
Right.
She could send out this coat to all of her friends and say, what do you think? Mm-hmm. You know, how many billion tweets a minute, or whatever it is,
Well, I think, for those of us who don't care for shopping that much, it opens up time for me to do that really efficiently, so I can use my time for other things.
What is the most valuable thing each of us has? It's our time. How many of you love to go grocery shopping for cans of peas? Think about it. How much time do we waste going to the grocery store and buying just the stuff to keep the pantry full? There's a great new device coming out, and it basically puts a sensor around the door into your pantry or your cupboards or whatever it is, and you program it and says, I want at least 6 cans of peas, never less than 2 cans of peas. So when you take out that last can of peas that clicks it over, it sends a message to Amazon or Google or whomever, or your local grocery store, and they start building the delivery that's going to come to you, that's going to bring you all up to your levels of commodities that you want. You can still go to the grocery store if you want to go run the aisles or whatever, but you don't have to go buy cans of peas.
I have to say, as somebody whose business for the last 25 years has been looking at other people's documents, that's just scares the hell out of every single one of us, and I don't care what age you are. That should scare the hell out of you. And having the having somebody track my hands and keys in my cupboard. We spend our time looking at what people put on and documented, intentionally written down on paper and saved, or written electronically and saved. That's bad enough. You wouldn't believe what people do. The idea that we would be tracked, and we are tracked without our having any cognizance of what that is, it should scare the hell out of every single one of us.
So there's an interesting question, I think, in technologies like this that should be presented to any entrepreneur or enterprise that's engaging in this kind of activity, and should be asked a lot more frequently than I think it is. And that question is, just because we can, should we? And I mean, this is really cool technology, and as futuristic as that may have looked, everything in there is possible today. I saw a mirror that operated exactly like that 2 years ago in an R&D lab in New York. And it was wired up with a prescription bottle so that it could remind the user who seated on the little ledge at the front of the mirror to take their medicine every day. And when the last pill was gone, reminded them that it was time to fill the prescription. And it put the doctor's name and the pharmacy's phone number right up there so they could take care of that at that instant. And it was all gesture-based, much like the woman in this video was doing. Every piece of technology shown in there is possible today. They haven't all been wired up yet, but they're there. Just because we can, should we?
And then if we shouldn't, how do you stop it?
Yep.
Because there's always going to be a group of people who are going to say, yes, I want it. You know,
whether or not they demand it, there are going to be people saying they want it.
Well, and there you go into the entrepreneurs who are saying, yeah, I have to because it's going to be a big business. You know, this is something that people are going to want. And we may perceive it as being invasive, but I think what happens is it begins to become less and less as you just get overrun by it all. And I know my kids are deep into this, and it's nothing for them. They don't think about it. But there are certainly questions there. Should we?
I do want to weigh in with one other thought on the whole privacy and control of your data idea here. There was a wonderful book a few years ago by a gentleman named David Siegel called Pull. And it was about the power of the semantic web, this space I operate in. If you think right now about all the companies you as a customer, as an individual, do business with, on your healthcare side, the pharmacies, the hospitals, the doctor's offices, the insurance companies, the grocery stores, the places you shop around town, the places you shop online, your banks, all of the businesses that you do business with. You have a data profile, or probably more than one, at each and every one of those. And the wonderful concept that David raised in his book was the idea of a personal data locker, where you own your data, and you have a single place where you are storing it and curating it and managing who gets access to what data points at what time. And that is something that the technologies that we've looked at today can enable, that will actually help us with our privacy and our control over our data.
But the corporate forces collecting the data would quash that idea, I suspect.
Well, but if I have a single canonical source for my data, and I have the ability to parse it out to whatever entity I want to at whatever time, and give them access to only certain data points. You know, for example, when I check into a hospital, the person admitting me has really no business seeing my whole medical history, but they may need to see my social security number to process me. But later that same evening...
Well, you think it's opt-in.
Yeah.
And this is the whole concept. You say, this is my data locker. Yes, Costco, yes, you can have access and you can capture my purchasing data, and you will pay me X for it. We have a valuable commodity in what we do. And one of taking this the next step is that companies are getting it for free right now and using it and selling it. So
those that are getting it for free will resist.
they will,
Of
they
course
will,
they will.
but
And they have a lot of power.
that doesn't mean it can't happen.
No, but it.
Because as we've seen here, there's kind of a...
Our relationships are pretty skewed in the favor of those
I
who
know,
have that.
I know, but if you start thinking about the consensus or almost consensus here is, you know, that scares me, that scares the hell out of me.
So you think that's a business opportunity to figure that out?
Oh, it's very
Absolutely.
much it's very much ongoing right now.
I know people who are working on that very business model.
Sure.
I do it by trying to use cash as much as possible, and I hear they're trying to figure out a way to track cash transactions to.
Well, they have all European cash has chips in them.
That's, I'd say, anathema to free society, in my opinion.
It works though, but
But there's so
It
much
might work, but it's not a good
the
idea.
chances of one person being picked out of that, there's so overwhelming. No one has figured out how to harness it. And, you know, to find you in the Costco parking lot, yes, someone could do it, but what are the chances if you're not doing something that you're not supposed to?
you'd be surprised how easy it is.
And for the average person, I mean, my husband knows I'm here. You can track me right now. I'm not doing anything I'm not supposed to be doing. I mean, part of it is what you allow yourself to be hooked up into. I'm not on Facebook. I don't have any friends that are tagging pictures of me on Facebook, or my kids, or saying, you know, oh, and we're going to go to so-and-so's party. I don't choose to, you know, engage in any of that. I don't care if the companies have my purchasing information. I mean, there's different compartments that you can put yourself in. You don't have to open yourself up to everything. Unfortunately, so many people have on accident already, you know, the spring break pictures, oh, we're taking pictures of, in my business with my logo on it. And I mean, everything's evidence. And if you can't separate that, if you can't Google yourself and see how much stuff is out there, you do actually have a little bit of control over that.
How many of you Google yourselves on a regular basis?
There are 3 things that we on the internet. I graduated from university, my grandpa's obituary, and my homeowners.
It always tells me how much money I gave to some political candidate.
Yeah.
That seems to be the first.
Hopefully the right ones. And she thanks you very much. And by the way, you left the light on in your bathroom.
It happened so fast. I was on a website, I was looking at a purse, I was thinking of buying it. I closed it, I went to the New York Times, the purse was on sale on the front page of the New York Times.
Amazing. Amazing. But how could they pick her out of all these billions of people?
It's not personal.
Well, it is.
I was logged into the New York Times as D.T. Franzen, and they know that D.T. Franzen is interested in this red purse from Coldwater Creek.
Yeah. And you better buy it quick, because Coldwater's going out of business. You know what you... Yeah?
On Friday, and looked, couldn't find them, and the next time I opened up the news browser, looked at the news, there they were on sale.
See, now those are good things. That's good that happened by being tracked, you know? So...
It's a little creepy, in my opinion.
And she's the technology blogger. I love it.
I mean, it could be, but I think if we understood why it's happening and how, if there wasn't so much, there's a sense of secrecy, and I didn't opt into this.
Yeah.
Maybe I did.
That's the key.
Somewhere I checked a box that says, yes, I've read the security agreement or the privacy agreement, and I really didn't.
All 12 pages of it.
I might have opted in, but I don't normally have the sense, I feel a little bit taken aback when I see those things, because I don't know how or if I actually opted into that. And for me, that's the problem. If I knew that, yes, I'd chosen all of that, it would be kind of cool.
So wouldn't it be great if there was an application that you could subscribe to, and it would, in very easy terms, warn you or tell you every time you're going to do something, people are going to start capturing data from you? Yes. Do you want to? Yes or no?
Yes, in easy terms, without
Sure.
that mumbo jumbo of the
It's like LifeLock. They guarantee you'll never be hacked. Isn't that the one? Yeah. So maybe this is a data lock. You know, we will guarantee that your data will never be used other than with your permission, and we'll make them pay.
Does this apply to the federal government?
Oh, they got a lot of explaining to do.
The other thing I would comment, this is off this topic, but you said that they are companies are collecting this information and getting it for free, and I would point out that we're not getting paid to provide that information, but it is not free. They pay, those companies invested billions and billions of dollars into R&D to be able to collect that
And then they sell what they earn too, of course. I mean, they don't do it out of the goodness of their heart.
They're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
No, well, it's absolutely essential these days to be competitive. It is just really the bottom line for everybody. So I got, you know, you might have to leave here, but anybody got an idea here? I got a bottle of wine here. I dare you. Come on. I dare you.
What's this for?
If you can come up with something that isn't impacted by or has an impact on data or is related to data in somehow.
I don't. But
and this is a data guy, sorry.
Interesting idea as well. Like, so Facebook. What if there was a reverse model of Facebook where they thought of the user as their customer and the person that they're selling the data to as their user?
Mm-hmm.
So where they come to me and say, yeah, well, we're going to sell your data, right? But you're a customer, so we'll pay you for your data, and then we'll go over to our users, and then have them pay for it too. And then as far as being anonymous, there are ways to cover your tracks using Tor browsers and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't want to be tracked, it's not that you're asking somebody else to not track you. You have to be the person, kind of like you were saying, responsible for making sure that your tracks are disappearing.
You have to be proactive.
You got to be pretty damn good at it, though, too. I mean, just bumbling through life, you're going to be.
So find any normal 8 or 9-year-old, and they can do it for you. I mean, that's how they grew. And the thing is
that know why you'd want it done, though.
Yeah, you think about the Safeway example. I mean, they're collecting all this data. Well, in a sense, they're kind of paying you for it, because you get the alerts about the deals, or you get so much off every time, where the people that aren't getting tracked by data can't get the discounts. So in effect, they've kind of already moved into that model. But I think I think we will see an evolution to where it'll become more of an opt-in and permission-based gathering of data, and it'll become something that for people it's very valuable. So why shouldn't they be earning something? You're right. Why aren't they the customer?
Russ, I think that the consensus among the general public would be, we want to be able to be private, but they don't organize themselves very effectively, and those forces that are on the other side are very well organized and very well funded. So
they're just
I think it's a battle, and I don't think
they're just individuals.
Yeah. Corporations.
Corporations are just individuals. It's no big deal.
I think one thing I will say, and I'm not defending corporate America in any way, but from a mercenary standpoint, the ones who are using big data really effectively are well aware of the creepy factor, and they're paying very close attention to it, and they could be doing much more aggressive marketing and aggressive personalization of services than they are doing now because of their aversion to that creepy factor. And there are people in these organizations who have that same reaction about their own data. So there is a balance even now going on within these companies to try to figure out what that safe spot is, and I don't think there's a good clear answer yet.
Wonderful Target was one of the first corporations that really got burned with this when they went too far. Have you heard the story?
The CEO just got fired, basically.
So when a young lady is pregnant, she will start buying certain things, vitamins, certain creams, etc. So they figured out, wow, it's great. If we see this pattern, there must be somebody in the household who's pregnant. So we could do a flyer and send them a flyer in the mail. It has all these great things, cribs and bottles and diapers and all that kind of stuff. So they sent it out, and they started the whole program until it got to one house, and the dad was sitting there, and there's no mom in the house, there's just the daughter, and he's going, why are we getting all this stuff about pregnancy? What's going on? Turns out the daughter was pregnant. So they got hammered on that one, but they refined it a little bit. So now they send out the flyers, and it's got things like, as well as the cribs and the diapers and everything, it's got lawnmowers, and it's got manly things, etc. So it's kind of hidden away.
The whole point of why they did it in the first place was to make it specific.
Well, this way it's still specific. If you through it, you'll see stuff you need, but it's not everything. So they've made it just a little less invasive. Yeah, yeah.
They took a little bit of the creepy out. They're trying to find that balance.
No, so any other questions, any ideas, any thoughts? How's the U doing with the data there?
We've been working for several years now trying to put together some big data programs. And we are working through this faculty approval process with a certificate in big data that's in the business school. Hopefully it'll be interdisciplinary. That's kind of what we're working for, and trying to get some buy-in from the math department and the CS department.
I watched a presentation last night from one of the biology professors, and he's working with Genome, human genome, and so he comes out with just billions of bits of data for all these genomes. And the problem is, how do you figure out, how do you visualize it? How do you look at it so it isn't just a clog of huge numbers and all these, CATG, that's the genome. And they figured out that there was this one program that's used by art students in the art industry, the entertainment industry, and that one could be used to do it. And so I was talking to them, and now they're thinking about getting art students or media art students to come in and help them visualize sequencing of the human genome so you can understand it. It breaks down barriers like you can't believe.
Now, you said that every student should have the ability to analyze data. Well, they can't do this stuff. What should they? What do you teach them?
Okay, that's my talk.
At a level, most of this is computer science, and a few computer scientists can do it.
That's my talk on Friday.
Okay.
That's little data. And I know there's these companies that are doing big data, and it's great, and it's wonderful, and it's huge, monstrous data. But I personally believe the real big factor in this is called the little data. It's the data within a business or within an organization. And if you can break down those silos between the departments, you start seeing incredible benefits to the company. It becomes much more of a proactive effort as opposed to a reactive effort. So that's little data, and I think little data is where all the money is. Anything else from anyone? Thank you.
Great. Thank you
This is
so
great.
much.
You're none of you are dummies. This is wonderful. Thanks. I get to keep the wine. Ha ha.